Captain Spifari says, greetings from Florida. The Supreme Court has made some horrific decisions this past week. Allowing states to further criminalize the homeless is one example. Well, let's jump right into that one, because that one's on my mind. That one is definitely on my mind. I caught news of that yesterday. A friend sent me the ruling. And honestly, I hear me out on this. All right, hear me out on this. The lawsuit was there's a town in Oregon who decided that they were going to solve their homeless problem by ticketing people that sleep outside. And by outside, they mean in anything other than a house. It has to. I believe it has to be a permanent structure. And you can't be sleeping on public grounds unless you can't be sleeping outside. You can't be sleeping on public property. You have to be sleeping in something that is permanent, or at least quasi-permanent. And they were, some folks got together and said, this is not okay. And they were sued on the grounds that it was unconstitutional based on, and I can't remember which amendment it is. It's either, I think it's 4 or 8. But basically they said this constitutes cruel and unusual punishment. Now, hear me out on this, okay? I'm saying this, and please understand I'm saying this with a very, very cynical attitude at this point. I understand why the Supreme Court sided with the city. I understand why the Supreme Court said this is not cruel and unusual punishment. It may be cruel. It is cruel. But sadly, this is par for course. This isn't unusual at all. It's par for course. This is how we treat people. We treat people cruelly, and it is no longer unusual. These homeless folks are sleeping on public property because they can't sleep on private property. They sleep on private property, they go to jail. It's trespassing. So they sleep on public property. Property that belongs to the state that they are members of. Property that ultimately, one might argue is partly theirs, or at least in some capacity belongs to them as much as it belongs to anybody else who would use that space. But the town just doesn't like the optics. Right? And it's not that they don't like homeless. It's not like they don't like the homeless problem, right? Homelessness. It's not that, maybe let's put it this way. It's not that they don't like homelessness. It's that they don't like the homeless. They don't like the appearance. They don't like the appearance of the homeless. They don't like how it looks. They don't like these tents lining the streets. They don't like my guess would be they don't like how it makes them look. Because it says something about your community. It does. And listen, this isn't a judgment about it. This is actually, I think, we could see this. We could see this as a blessing if you were like from a public servant perspective. You could see the tents on public property as a blessing because it's telling you there is a problem. And this is low-hanging fruit. You can do something about this. This is something that you can tackle. This is something tangible. You can touch this. You can see this. Everybody sees this. This is something that the whole community could get behind. Right? In our city, in Halifax, we have a large number of people living in tents, living in their vehicles, living in what should be temporary accommodations. We have a large number of people living in seasonal. So, for example, campers and trailers and that kind of thing. We have a large number of people, and partly one of the big reasons is because they can't afford the rent, and it's twofold. They can't afford the rent, and there is nothing to rent in this city. Our vacancy rate is below 1%. The city's grown so fast, so quickly, that if you're financially speaking, if you're living below the poverty line, you're probably not going to find an apartment unless it's through public housing, and there just isn't enough public housing. So this town in Oregon, they decided they were going to do something about the homeless problem. Not homelessness. They weren't going to touch homelessness. They were going to do something about the homeless problem. The problem they had with the homeless, which is we don't want to see it. And so we've got to come up with a way of convincing these people to leave town, to get out of my sight. Because if I can't see you, then hey, problem solved, right? If I can't see you, problem solved. The aesthetic problem for that person may be solved, but the problem isn't solved by far. As a matter of fact, you've made it worse. See, the thing is about a homeless person, it's not that they just, today something happened and, oh no, I'm homeless. No. This is, generally speaking, it's a series of issues. Right? There's a bunch of things happening. The homelessness is a symptom of several other really, really bad days. The homelessness is a symptom of a series of issues. It's not one thing, right? It's not one thing. It's not going to be solved by getting rid of the tent. There's a lot of things to deal with here. And if we're brave and if we're bold and if we actually care, then we'd be willing to say, well, I see the tents. That tells me there are some issues. Let's help these folks and tackle these issues. If we're not brave and bold, and if we're not loving, and if we really just don't care, apart from how it impacts us, then yeah, ticketing sounds like the perfect solution. So again, I'll come back to it. I completely understand why the Supreme Court said this isn't cruel and unusual. It's only cruel. The Supreme Court didn't say that, but there's nothing unusual about this cruelty. This cruelty is par for course. And as a matter of fact, this will probably open the door for other communities to do the same thing. I hope not, but it will probably lead in that direction. I was talking to someone about this today, and there's the definition we have for a sacrament, baptism as an example, an outward visible sign of an inward invisible gift. And it struck me that homelessness is an outward visible sign of an inward, what is often an inward and invisible issue or issues. And a sacrament is a gift to us, right? That outward visible sign of that inward invisible gift is a gift to us. Could we as a society reframe the way we think to see homelessness as a gift? Not in and of itself, but as a gift because it shows us there's need. It makes it very clear that there is need. It beckons us forward to help with that need. It calls on us and says, listen, hey, I'm right here. Help me. Hey, there's a thing here that you can do something about. There are issues here that you can handle. And if you handle these issues, it will make your whole society better. It will make your whole community better. But again, that would say something. If we did that, if we said, okay, here's this homelessness. Let's get on this. Right, let's get into this. Let's tackle this. Let's do what we can do. Again, this is low-hanging fruit. If you're a politician, if you're a politician, this is low. You can make a career out of this kind of thing. you can look like a saint. Regardless of who you really are, you could look like a terribly loving and compassionate person. There's always a job here. There's always going to be a job dealing with the homelessness problems that our cities have. But if you choose not to, if you happen to be that kind of person that would say, hey, you know what? No, just give them a ticket. Right? No, sure, they don't have any money. Yeah, I get it. They're saving to do something, but give them the $100 ticket and get them out of here. Give them the $50 ticket and get them out of here. Give them so many tickets that they just can't stay anymore, and they get up and they leave and they never come back. They go to the next town. Like, let's make it their problem. If you're that person, it says something about you. It says something about you. It tells the world about you. It says so much to you, to the world. Like, you'd never be able to, you couldn't possibly write down something more concise that explains to the world who you are than giving a homeless person a ticket. It tells the world it tells the world what your true priority is, doesn't it? It's you. It's your comfort. It's your peace. It's how you want to perceive your community, how you need to perceive your community, how you need to see your neighbors, how you need the rest of the world to see you based on incredibly shallow metrics. Hey, that town doesn't have any tents. They must be doing something right. They're obviously successful. They're obviously a place that I want to live and bring my business to. But it doesn't tell them that. It just tells, when you ticket the homeless, all it does is it tells us that's how you want to be perceived. But that isn't how you're perceived. No. Cruel and unusual? Sadly, no. Cruel, definitely. Ticketing the homeless. Absolutely cruel. Just a beautiful indication that they don't care at all about the condition of their brothers and sisters. Beautiful indication that all they care about is the superficial. A beautiful indication that they have no desire whatsoever to carry the burden of their brothers and sisters. Which, for what it's worth, biblically speaking, also means that they're fine not being in obedience to the law. No, we got to do what you can, when you can, for who you can. But for God's sakes, if you can't do anything, right? If you can't do anything, don't do something cruel. Don't make their life worse. Don't add to their trouble. Don't add to their suffering. And I get it. It's these are big problems, and we can't fix it. It's right. We can't fix it. We can jump in and we can pitch in and we can help out, but we can't fix it. We can't just make it go away, or we say we can't. But by God, we also don't have to be cruel. We don't have to be mean. We don't have to add to their misery. Amen.